if that was the top of your leaderboard this weekend, my dad would be going nuts. That's a great board. He knows everybody in the mix. Like, that's wonderful. Who's this Alex Smalley loser? Even though we just said we know he's not a loser, he's playing incredible golf. My point is, if he's seeing these guys up there, he's thrilled. This is a 9, 2 8s, and 3 7s build. It does land in the 7K realm of what your Xander Cam Young lineup lands on, needing 4 of those guys, but this gets you to 2 8K guys that could most certainly be in the mix, Decky and Hovland, whether you believe it or not, and then lands on Fleetwood, who won the FedEx Cup last year and is Tommy Fleetwood. Doesn't matter like what he did last week or the week before. It's this week that we need to worry about. So just my point of long-term talent, fitting a unique build, obviously coming in lower owned and leaving a ton of guys that are going to be popular off the table. Again, maybe not for you to fit in your 10 lineups, but when people wonder how this stuff and how people get to this stuff and how it wins and how they get to this stuff, this is a prime example.
So obviously for mass multi-entry GPPs, large-scale tournaments, would you consider something like this in a single entry or a 3 max, or even I'm going to try to qualify for some of the megas this week and try to get in that? Would this be a lineup for that, or is it just this is better for taking on 100,000 people rather than 70?
I think it's a misconception amongst the industry, because the facts are like, obviously this would be better to take on, to most people anyway, or like the numbers and the math and the sims and all that stuff. Like, this is going to be much better to take on a large field tournament and then hope that that's your play and that's what gets you there. But I think people forget these mega $13 mega with 400 something people, it's winner take all.
Yeah.
So what do I know? Probably 1 to 5, probably less than 5 people will have a lineup anywhere near this, maybe less than 3. So if this does take off, I just win it. It's not going to be a question.
At Mayo Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience Truist Championship DraftKings picks. Used to be known as the Wells Fargo Championship. We're back at Quail Hollow after an off year. So if you're searching course history, Tambo, is what I've been telling people all week. Last year, the PGA Championship was at Quail Hollow. In 2022, the President's Cup was at Quail Hollow. So if you're looking at course history and who did well those years at this tournament, not the same course.
Yeah, it's different. You always got to keep that in mind. I know it becomes a factor at a lot of different tournaments we talk about, right, where people are trying to figure that out. But I think there's more to it. It is another signature event, squeezed in the week before a major. We got no Scotty this week. So there's a lot to talk about when we get to the tournament.
So, but before we do that, I want to just throw it back to you. Again, betspertsgolf.com/Mayo to get yourself a big discount on the Rabbit Hole system, all of the tools. Additionally, code Mayo at Underdog will get you a big deposit bonus, and your first $5 entry in the Pick'em game will get you just $50, win or lose. So highly recommend that you do that, especially with the PGA Championship coming up. You got hockey and basketball going on every night. And then my favorite printing press, the WNBA, coming back very soon. So get in on that right now at Underdog. But I appeared on Pete's So You Think You Can Tout show, and you were like one of the biggest consumers of that.
Yeah, I certainly think it's a phenomenal idea overall. Shout out to Pete. I think he's most certainly the best to run something like that and host it. So it's an awesome thing to see, the setup of it all, the voting site, all those factors. But I loved watching it. Obviously, you being a guest judge makes a ton of sense, completely unfiltered. I sort of threw myself under the bus again. It's been 7 long years, Pat, but that was my first ever Pat Mayo Experience setup where I hopped on the show with you and obviously just got absolutely cooked as I posted, but you can always bounce back. I thought that was kind of a point for some of these folks that were doing their stuff, but I also thought the audition mixed with the bits and what was really being looked for. You talked about jump cuts and things like that. Like, I just felt like a lot of people it's not going to give a good sense. The goal was to have the best addition to be able to get to the next rounds where maybe you could showcase some of those additional factors. And I think that's why some people felt a little off about your voting and the way you handled it. But I think it was fine. I was more in on your side, and not just because I'm from the Mayo Militia myself.
Well, and you also own a site where you hire people to do content for you, that if someone shows up and does a highly edited 20-second TikTok bit, like, what does that tell you?
Yeah, certainly. I think it's what it tells me is that, and like you said, owning a site and being involved with Hoop over at Ship It Nation is huge for, keeping an eye on this contest. I definitely think there's going to be opportunities that come out of it from the media side. And I think at the end of the day, like you said, those bits and those creations and things that people came up with, some of them very strong. And I posted with somebody out there, I think it was, Tyler, the emo cowboy, when he had a ton of votes. I said, look, the people love you. I thought the bit was phenomenal, and it takes a ton of confidence just to go out and even do that. but it doesn't necessarily tell the other side of what Pete's looking for and what you were voting on of like, can this person hop on a show? And by the way, hosting and being a guest, two different things. And I know Pete's open to both sides, but I think that was the other factor of it is, can they host? Can they be a good guest? I don't know when it's just a really good audition tape with a bit. It's not really getting on a reality show where you need to show that side. You need to show in the beginning audition, in my opinion, at least, that you can do either or, hosting or guest, being a guest on there.
Well, I even threw that out to some people. Just like, I don't see you as a main player on something with the bit that you're doing, but as like a 5-10 minute hit or like a once every month guest hit, it could be hilarious. But I don't necessarily know, like the temperament that you need to have and the skill set that you need to have to host 3, 5, 6 shows a week for hours at a time. It's different than what a lot of people were going for there.
Yeah, certainly. That's what I said. I think that was where it was missed a little bit. That's why I posted a list out. There was 10 folks on there that I liked. I think Pete called it too. It wasn't too much female presence. We have some female, hosts and guests throughout the space that are obviously very good, but I think there wasn't much representation there, which is fine. That's, to be expected on the first ever. Hopefully there's, a follow-up and things like that. I just think it's a really good concept. It's fun. It's different. It's unique. And like you said, as somebody that is a co-owner at a media site that also does content and data and all this other stuff, we're certainly keeping an eye on the media side of things with the way the market's going as far as tools, data, AI, things like that. It is going to become a lot more about marketing and distribution. And I think having these hosts and guests and ability to do solo shows, by the way, really hard to do. So things like that all add up and matter. And that's what I'm keeping an eye on throughout.
Well, you mentioned that when I cooked you the first time that you came on, I can't believe that was 7 years ago.
It's a long time.
Well, I think it was on the PGA Championship show too.
Yeah, it's pretty close. I know me, you, and Blickle are going to be back next week. It was me, you, and Raza back then. And the thing is, the people just lost the bit. I don't want to harp on it, but if you watch the clip is phenomenal. One of the most hilarious of all time, in my opinion. And again, it's at my own expense. But I would say I was cooking through that show until that point. If for those that don't know the context and saw the clip, I had the 9K range and the 10K and above nailed. What I thought when you got to that range was you were going to do it the same way. And that's, again, being a good guest, pay attention to the host. That was the problem. So I was prepared for something that you were going a totally different path on. And that was where I made the mistake.
The other part too, like you've transitioned huge from like you were a guest, like whether it be at Roto Grinders, like when you were starting out, then you would come on with me. And then eventually you ended up with Kenny on Fantasy Golf Degenerates and doing these other shows along the way. But you became a host of your own show too, over at Ship It Nation and some other spots. Like, did you find that a hard transition to do rather than being the guy who reacts and gives analysis versus the guy that needs to keep the conversation going?
It is. It's different for sure, I will say. And I think that's why I mentioned it. Like there's like 3 things to me. One is being a guest. One is being a host, and one is doing solo shows. I don't think people realize or recognize how difficult that actually is. You had me doing some of those on your channel, and I remember in the beginning they were recorded, and man, there was some takes, like meaning resets and restarts, and holy shit, that was bad, and et cetera, et cetera. So there's so much that goes into it. But as far as transitioning to a host, I think comfortability and understanding the sort of the task at hand and who's good for what, and then being able to sort of recognize where to throw things, where to throw in the one-liners. And for me, that's kind of been my thing, one-liners and wittiness and cleverness and things along the way, just trying to be able to throw that stuff in. If you can do that, I think that helps as a host because you can sort of ease the transitions and segues. You can find out who this question might go to if it's a 3-man booth or 3-person booth. So I just think there's a bunch of different factors to it, but it takes experience and it takes time and you got to want it. That's the key. 7 years, like you said, long time.
It is. And I was DMing with someone who I think I just gave a scathing review to. And I was like, look, man, like if he's like, well, it sucks that you gave me a bad review. I was like, do you think that like when I was starting out, all of the people that were currently in the industry really enjoyed what I was doing? Because they did not enjoy that whatsoever. Because I had this style 17 years ago, which didn't really exist. Now, a lot of people, I transitioned into YouTube and transitioned into long form podcasting, but the main source of media when I was starting out, whether it be gambling or fantasy sports, was like Sirius XM radio. And I had a show on Sirius XM radio. Me and Sussman in the mornings on a show I did for free. Like took the train into Manhattan, went to the Sirius studios. It was pretty cool. It was a huge opportunity for like 23-year-old me. But it was an unpaid 3-hour show that I was doing with Sussman, who had just got out of broadcasting school as well. We learned a lot there. But that show would not resemble anything that I do. It was like just a very conventional radio talk show where this is elements of that, but it's different, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does, certainly. And I think it's funny you said that, because even like you were just on as a guest judge, and some people still don't like your style or how you handled that. And it's like, at the end of the day, I mean, it was perfect in my opinion. Pete backed it up as well. I think how you were direct with people is key. I think if it's just, some people don't like to accept poor feedback, right? They want to be, they want to be accepted. They put it out there. They put themselves out there. It is a lot. And I think that's where you got to take that away. As somebody who did an edition and maybe got a bad review, you still put yourself out there. You had enough confidence to step up and do it. Look, only 135 people even came to the plate. Even if you were in the bottom 10% or whatever, and it didn't work out for you this time, you can stop and quit, or you can try and get after it and keep going. There's other opportunities out there. So I think it's just all how you choose to look at it. And there's going to be people that do really well in this competition and get really far, and then still don't end up with anything at the end of it. And again, they'll have that same decision to make at that time as well.
And you can just say, fuck Mayo, fuck what he says. I'm going to keep doing triple down on what you're doing. Just as you mentioned, have some confidence with it and keep going. The one thing that I didn't mention on that show, one of the biggest traits that you can have over anything else is just showing up at the same time every day. Honestly, I've seen so many people who were good, and then they just have like a lap schedule. Well, I'll take a week off here, or I'll take 2 weeks off here. And then once you get out of sight, out of mind, you're kind of gone sometimes.
Yeah, that's the key to almost anything, right? Is just people don't realize it. Consistency, those are making money in the markets, and so many different things that you think about in life, where it's like, really the key is they just kept showing up. They didn't go away. I've seen it posted before. There's some really good quotes around it. Like, if you were betting against me, get your refunds now. Like, it's not going to happen. Like, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep coming after it, and you'll see. And that's kind of the key. If you're just showing up, you can make it work. Obviously, at some point, there has to be a transition to some skills. So you need to be working on things along the lines. If you're losing at DFS and you're never working on getting better, or you're losing at sports betting and you're not trying to dig into why, probably you can keep showing up. You might just keep losing money. Or in this case, if you keep showing up to host and not getting any better, or looking for tips and tricks and getting better and practicing and all of that, of course, probably not going to end up translating over to what you want to do. But there is something to be said for just showing up nonstop and keep it rolling on that front.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing I learned after like working with Morency for so long. That, those 3 years, kind of watching him do like 8 shows in a row all by himself on different topics. Like no matter what was going on with Morency, he was always there. He was always prepared. He was always filming. And obviously, I've cribbed his style a little bit, but made it more like my style, but versions of him. And I don't think that Gabe gets enough credit for that. I mean, dude's been doing it for like 35 years, and it's mainly 3 hours by himself, which is an impossible skill.
Yeah, it's also goes to like the two of the worst sayings out there of like must be nice, or like they always get lucky. It's like you could take this to an even bigger stage, actually, Pat. But like, Mr. Beast has the famous video from when he's super young, and he's there. He's like, I'm going to check back on this in 10 years. And honestly, for like, I think it's like 7 years, he got nothing. And then it eventually just flipped, right? And then it flipped in the most massive way possible. And that's on the grand scheme, higher scale, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm saying the point was, he started and just kept showing up. And you hear all the stories of him working in the YouTube groups of him and his friends. All they did is obsess over thumbnails and views and hooks and transitions and all these different things that you can work on your quote unquote YouTube game. And it turned out quite nicely for him. It was, it must be nice to be Mr. Beast. He just opens up a chocolate bar brand and has all this money and gets anything he wants whenever. It's like there was the work put in. You can literally go see. It's documented.
The other part of it, too, was obviously I'm a different age group than most of the people that put in applications. So whatever like their weird internet references are, I just don't get. But you have to remember that, too, unless you want to be super niche. And I've been very open about, like, I could be more broad. Even like 10 years ago, I could have kept the show as broad as possible, especially when I was starting out and we were really getting some traction. But I wanted to become more insular, more inside jokes, more mean-spirited content, which just frankly isn't for everyone.
Right. That's definitely true, but I think it's always better that, again, to niche down and do it that way is probably better off for most. But I think that's part of what Pete's process is right now too, it's going to be tough on him, right? Trying to figure that out. Is it like, I want this Gen Z person who is extremely confident because they're going to hit with the market that I want to hit with in the topics I want to hit on, and be able to translate for a longer period of time for me, and I can grow with them and help them out that way? Or is that going to be a bit of a negative? I'm not saying it would be, but just to note, it could be of, okay, so I bring this person on, I give them the platform, they're going to start out for a reasonable, value deal that they put their application in for this offer, knowing what they're winning. But then in a year's time, they're going to be like, man, I have all these different opportunities. I'm young, I'm up and coming, I'm this, that, and the other. And those are factors to consider as well. Not saying that Pete is, just noting it. There's always different angles to it, but you've always been good of sort of helping create things and creators in their own right, and then being able to sort of let them fly on their own and do whatever is best for them, and just know that the industry's niche and it can grow in tons of different ways and still keep opportunities open for everybody.
Yeah, my platform has always been a good launching ground for people to get some good live reps in, and then they can go off and do what they want. There's been a ton of people who've come through. She said the Mayo Mafia over the years who are like thriving more than I am.
Yeah, you got the Mafia one in there. I would say Mayo Militia. I think they're both good, but it kind of reminds me of like the football coaches. We're like, oh, he comes from the Shanahan camp or whatever, right? Or the Belichick stuff or whatever you want to use over the years. It's like kind of like that. Eventually, these people do go out and find different opportunities, and it is because of that. But I guess it goes back to our whole conversation and tying it all together of that is putting in the reps, that is getting the practice, keep showing up, getting the work, learning, growing, getting better, and then going and applying it. And if people are, I always say this too, Pat, it goes with like, charging money for a site or for a subscription or something like that. Like people are like, oh, I can't believe this, and this. Like in this economy, people aren't just giving up their money unless they're seeing value, right? So there has to be something there. And it's the same with creator economy of if somebody else is going out and getting their show and they're starting to see views and it's working, you got to block out that stuff. People can hate on it all they want, but people are showing up and there's a show for a reason. So that's kind of the factor you got to remember. It's people wouldn't give their audience and attention time to you if there wasn't a reason to. So that's kind of part you got to keep in the back of your mind as well.
So consistency is such a big thing, showing up all the time to get consistent views. And I don't really feel like it's all that different from, DK every single week. That I don't know which weeks I'm going to win and which weeks I'm going to lose, Tambo. I really wish I did, and I would play more money on the weeks that I was going to win. But I think that's an underrated part of the process, especially if you're not a full-time player like you are, but a full-time player that I play every single week. Obviously, playing on DraftKings could never be my main income because I would lose too much. But I have good weeks, I have bad weeks, I have break-even weeks, and even last week, I didn't play a ton last week. In fact, I only submitted the lineups that we made on the show, but we made one that was good enough that won me money for the week. It was the Cam Young, Scotty Scheffler lineup that we ended up throwing in to see, hey, could this work? And like Lipsky and Michael Kim have like really fire final days, and all of a sudden it kind of works out. You work your way up into the money, and you end up being good to go on that front. But how much of the process to you is like, hey, you're taking weeks off when you have scheduled weeks off kind of thing, but how important is it to play every single slate if you have a good process?
If you have a good process, I think you should be playing. And I had this conversation in one of the DFS Mastermind monthly Q&A roundtables the other night, and it was kind of the bridge of people that, have experience, play every week. It's not about being a full-time player. It's just saying like they're into the game, they understand DraftKings and daily fantasy, and they want to be involved, and they feel like they have, some sort of angle in, and they're working on, their process. But the other side of it is like not understanding how to cross that bridge. And part of it is what you just said. And we talked about that specifically is like, if you feel like you have the edge, you should be playing. But what some people say is, okay, I know that I should split my money up over the year. I know it's the long game. I got to be around for the entire PGA DFS season. And then some even go a step further and say, okay, I'm going to be playing classic slates and showdown slates. So I know I need to have money for that. But where the drop is, where the train falls off the tracks or whatever you want to call it, and it doesn't quite bridge over, is when people say, well, I play the $100 single entry every week. I play $50 on Saturday. I play $50 on Sunday. But why would that be? If you feel like you've got a certain edge on certain weeks, whether it's a weather advantage or everybody's on Scotty, and I think those lineups are horrible, and I've mathed it out, and it works out that I don't want any Scotty, like those are the weeks you should be pulling money in to play a little bit more. And then on the weeks you don't feel you have the edge, you can either not play, and that's how you get the money for that situation that I just discussed, or you can just play a little bit less. And that's where you said, like, you still think, look, I know how to play PGA DFS. I'm going to attack it from this angle. I just don't feel like I have the same edge. And I think that's where a lot of people miss it and lose it, is they just corner themselves into like, I play X amount every week. And then there's obviously players that are worse that don't understand this, Pat, like you said, would just lose money and say $100 this week, $100 this week, $100 this week. Now I'm out of money. Oh, well, there's still 35 weeks of golf left. So sucks that you lost your bankroll. You should have been playing $5 a week in that example or something like that. You know what I mean? The math.
With my example, because I want to transition to signature events and the style around that I've had some really good weeks in these no-cut events, but by and large, I do very poorly at them. I was trying to map out, like, where do I actually win money playing DFS golf? The answer is kind of nowhere, but beginning of the year is usually when I do well. Hawaii, West Coast. Do you know why?
I would love to know, because I have an interesting takeaway on this, but tell me why.
I'm better at events that have cuts.
Right. So you've realized that, and that's part of your edge. So you can apply process to either or, but like those events should be where you're thinking about, let me get in some more action, or let me attack it from this angle because I think this is where I'm going to have more success over the long term. May not show up this week, but I know for these events, that's where I want to spend a little bit more. Like when people suck at Showdown, but still jam it every week. It's like, why? If you're not good at that, it's good to practice a little here and there, but clearly you should be focused on where you've won money and are winning money, if at all.
I play Golf Showdown once a year, and it's at Torrey Pines. That's it.
And that's good because that's protecting. And even like you're making fun of yourself for like losing other times, everyone knows you've had good seasons, good years, profitable years. You're fine. It's just noting it. Like you still do recognize that and you just don't waver from it. And that's good because now it's like you talked about earlier in the content stuff with having a niche and being in your own space, and it's not for everyone. That strategy may not be for everyone. Certainly not for me. I'm playing Showdown every week, but that's also one of my best games. So for me, that's going to be different than you. And that's where everybody has to recognize it's not, apples to apples for everybody. There's concepts and theories and things that you can apply apples to apples, but then you have to formulate the plan around yourself and how you see your game. And you mentioned it with the no cuts versus the cuts being a thing that you recognize being in your favor.
I wouldn't even say it's necessary. Maybe that's not the entire concept. Maybe it's not cut versus no cut. It's strong field versus weak field. I have a very difficult time discriminating between the very top guys. And then I feel like in events like this, like if we're going to use the Truist, for example, when I get down to the $6,000 range, like everyone's kind of good and can kind of pop. Whereas when I get into like to Colonial, it's like Scotty, Ben Griffin, two other guys of note, and then just like 100 goobers in the field. I am far more comfortable going down to the 6K range there and be like, hey, I actually like this guy, and I think that he is way better than all of these. Obviously, that doesn't always work out, but the biggest wins that I've had has been through that sort of concept at these lesser events. That I'm definitely not a lock to get 6 of 6 through every single time, but I find that when I do build lineups that way with high-end guys and low-end guys or even low 7K guys that I personally like better than the projection, because I feel like projections are bad for that type of player because you don't have a huge sample and you're kind of betting on talent of a 4-round spike versus what this guy has done in the rest of his career, that when I do get some of those 6 of 6s through, that they've been very profitable for me.
Yeah, so the 6 to 6 weeks, Blickle and I talk about this always. I know he'll be back on here with us next week talking through the major. I think
this weekend it'll be out.
Yes, that's right. We're going to record it early too, and it'll be good to roll. We set it up from that perspective. Him and I'll be back tomorrow on the Ship It Nation YouTube station at 10:30 a.m. Eastern doing Leverage Lane. But just noting it, we've talked a ton about that. Like we love the cut weeks because if you can get a cut week, which seems tough these days where you get a low 6 to 6 percentage, but when you get a 5% or less 6 to 6 week and you've got 10 to 20% 6 to 6s, that's where you're really in a great position, right? Obviously, it's going to be a weekend ahead and things can happen. Doesn't matter. It may not always work out, but that's the position you want to be in. So those weeks can work in our favor. But I will rewind a bit just to one thing you said there, and I'll be very results oriented and use last week in a cut event, prime example, et cetera, et cetera. But I know it's results oriented to say Scotty Scheffler and Cam Young. But if you really like the low 7s, the upper 6s, and it's just like, look, I can't really pick who's going to be the guy down there, but I know it's like a pool of them. But I do really love Scotty and Cam Young up top. If you just commit to those two, you'll get a bunch of Scotty lineups with 5 goobers, as you called them. You'll get a bunch of Cam Young lineups with unique constructions and some of those goobers, as you called them. And you'll get some Scotty Cam Young lineups, like you said, the one that made you profitable last week. So that's where I wrote this article on X a few weeks back, probably about a month ago now, at Toe Tag and Tambo. You guys can go check it out in our articles. And Pat, I talked about letting the field and the event and what you see, you sort of create your player pool and then bring your contest selection to you. Because if you say, I really like just Scotty and Cam Young up top, and I don't know who I like down low, but I just want to fire away. Well, that might be a week to play 50 lineups in the $5 for $250, as opposed to playing a $100 single entry, a $25 3 max, et cetera, because you like 2 guys and a bunch of dudes that you don't know who you like the most. So firing away might be better for you based on the slate at hand and how you're viewing it.
And I felt, even like, listen, I didn't hit the outright winner last week because, as you know, I don't like to bet people with low odds. I'm a sucker for bigger odds and end up losing a ton of money. It's what I do. It's my favorite thing to do in outright golf betting. However, I had a good sense of, like, even when I did the research, I was like, this is a perfect course for Scotty and Cam Young. Like, these are the 2 guys clearly above everyone else. Can I make this work on DraftKings? And we were able to do that. But I look at the board this week again, and I kind of feel the same way, that there are 5 guys. There's 2 guys, then 2 guys, then 1 guy. Let's group them as a 5. How do I differentiate between that bunch? Because you got Rory, Cam, Xander, Fitz, and Ludwig. I think that those 5, and Ludwig's probably not on their tier, but I think at this course that he can be. And that's not to say that one of those 5 guys is going to win, but I feel very comfortable with those 5 guys and trying to figure out how to build lineups around them. Like, I don't care about Ricky Fowler at $9,000 at all. It doesn't mean he's not going to win or come in second or be a critical part of making the jigsaw puzzle work, but that's just not where I'm going to be going this week. And I need to figure out how to construct my lineups around that.
Yeah, and then the second part to that is because like you're already talking through it and you've got it, is like you do feel confident in those 5 up top. I think one thing that gets sort of misconstrued a little bit, or it's tricky for us to sort of portray without saying it just like it is, if you're when we're building lineups on this show and we decide to say, okay, what does a Cam Young Xander lineup look like? Remember that we're saying look like. It doesn't mean again, you'll put it in, you'll end up on that exact lineup too, I'm sure, but the concept is more important, right? Like I would say, DFS is how, not who. It's worth saying if you went that route. Now, in my example earlier, Pat, and even for like giving you the advice of saying, hey, I've got 5 guys up top I'm comfortable with. After that, I'm sure you have your favorites down low, but it's also that there's a bunch of options when you are just building out. If you were going to build 50 lineups, you could build multiples of those. So while we might build one Cam Young Xander lineup on this show with your favorites, you might have 10 of those in your portfolio that weren't on the show, but the concept still stands. It was like, I'm building some Cam Young Xander lineups and, playing that roulette game down at the bottom, if you will.
Underdog's expanding the game. You already know their player picks. Pick higher or lower on player stats. Today, Underdog prediction markets are live in 25 states. Back your squad with spreads, handicap for closer game, or totals, higher lower combined score, combined with player picks for bigger payouts. New customers play $5 on fantasy, get $75 in fantasy bonus entries. Code Mayo. Team picks, player picks, all on Underdog. Let's start building some lineups for the Truist. You mentioned the key name here. It's Cam Young. He's second on the board. Rory is like the big price tag at 11.7. He's a 4-time winner of this event. The last time that we saw him, he was winning the Masters. Although it seems like I have a feeling that people aren't going to jam Rory at all. And I have a feeling they might pass on Cam Young. If I had to wager right now, 10K Xander is the play everyone's going to.
I still think it'll be Cam Young, but it's going to be close between those two.
Or do you think it'll be a lot of Cam Young Xander lineups?
I definitely think those are going to be in the mix this week for sure, because the reason being, and we don't have to jump ahead too far, but back to your thought of just those 5 guys up top, I don't think that's an uncommon thought right now. Like Fleetwood, Siwoo, Bobby Maxwell, Cantlay, Burns, Fowler, nobody cares. Then you go down to even like, again, maybe people come around on a Decky or a McNeely or something, but that's not the ones that come around on first. I'm saying like, I don't think they come around on them at all when you have Gotterup and Minwoo and Knapp and guys like that. I know Knapp WD'd or whatever, but just my point being, there's projection poppers, but not many in the 8K. So what I do think is comfortable for people is definitely going to be Cam Young, Xander, and then wherever that lands them in popular options, because in the upper 6s and the lower 7s, really all the 7s, we have a ton of options you can go to there and it fits just fine.
Do you think that people might have Cam Young just won, he's not going to win again, or are people just all in on Cam Young?
There's 2 things. One, that is sometimes correct. I don't think it exists in full this week, but I think that's where, like we talked about this last week, some of the concepts maybe were newer, or like because I haven't been on in a while or certain things like that. But some people mentioned like the Xander thing where with Xander this week, he may end up very similar to Cam Young because of that, but people do still land on Cam Young. So it's like, that's kind of the concept where it's not, when we talked about like pivoting versus like totally different unique builds, that's where someone might say, oh, if everyone's going to go to Cam Young, I'll just go to Xander, but it's not going to work. Xander's still going to be owned. You're still going to be in a similar build. Playing them both together is probably still popular this week because you do end up with 7,500 remaining. Blickle and I walk through sort of the common build tomorrow once we have better ownership, but you and I will do it today. And I think there will be common builds that definitely start with Xander and Young, and then just whoever the popular guys are in the 7s. And if they don't get to Minwoo or Gotterup, so be it. Playing one of them might get to one of those guys or both, but I think a lot of people will just start with Xander and Cam Young together, which last thing makes the most interesting thing to me, Pat, when we get there, of like, what about Fitzpatrick right now. I think he's just as good, if not, again, people are going to take because Cam Young last week, Cam Young at the mate. I get all that, but Fitz has been phenomenal lately. So he's another guy there at 9,900. Where does he end up in this equation?
See, I like Fitz a ton here. So I think that maybe if you want to play, let's say the two favorite guys that you have are Cam Young and Xander, which I don't think is going to be outrageous this week. I think that those are probably two very good selections. But you could either go up to Rory, who is probably you're going to get an ownership break on, although you're giving up a lot of salary to do that, or instead of playing Cam Young and Xander, play Xander and Fitz or Cam Young or Fitz and just go that way. Not that Fitz is going to be unowned, but I think that he'll come in less than those two by a pretty good margin.
Agreed. And I think one of the other interesting things is if you just write off the top three in some, because remember, if you're going Cam Young and Xander, you're also not getting to Rory. So it's not like Rory's a part of this equation at all when you're comparing the trio of Young, Xander, and Fitzpatrick. So if you were to start with one of Young or Xander and go to Fitz, definitely think that's better than just the Young Xander starts. Not for results. We'll see what happens. I'm just saying I get that what you were saying of why that would be different. And then secondary to that is if you just said, look, I'm going to start with Fitz and get a completely unique build and hope he's the guy that beats Xander and Cam Young and neither are needed. That's another way that you could go as a way to get different, but it's a bit more aggressive with the win equity of those top three.
Young Xander sounds like the world's worst sitcom.
Yeah. Xander Young, maybe flip it around.
I have a hot take on Cameron Young.
Okay.
He should have came like 10th last week.
Why?
It was all like he drove the ball immaculately. I cannot take that away from him, but it was all chipping and putting, all of it.
Yeah. Now, again,
if he shows up with the same approach game this week that he did last week, just normalize his numbers to his baseline, which is good. He's in like T15.
Yeah, I think I was trying to look at it like round 1 and 2 around the green game and putting. Then round 3 wasn't much of anything there. And round 4, he did have a bit of the putter, but who cares? He was already up $1 million. So
he gained 7 strokes putting. 7 strokes. That might be the most of his career. Let's see. When he wins, this happens. So at the Wyndham Championship last year was the most he's ever gained in a tournament. That was, let's see, he gained 10 strokes putting. Phoenix last year, 7.4. Cadillac Championship, 7.6. There was a U.S. Open last year where he gained 7.9 and came T4. But like the approach game, if he putts like this again, then obviously he's going to win. I just would not bank on Cam Young putting that way every week.
Sure, but also on the flip side of that, I think what he's shown now, I mean, obviously the factor of like when somebody putts really well, specifically a guy like Cam Young, he can win or be right in the mix. But it's also to what you said, it's becoming more consistent. Now, not that it's something that you can rely on as consistency with the putter. It's tough. I get it. But I'm saying we've seen it multiple times. He's seen it multiple times. He can kind of figure his way out. By the way, what can you chop off there last week and he still wins, right? Like how much of that can you take away and he still gets the W?
Well, you can take off what? If he gains 2 strokes putting, like just if we go through the numbers, he also gained 3 strokes around the green as well. So you take off 1 stroke. Let's say you gain 2 strokes around the green and you gain 2 strokes putting. All of a sudden, you've lost to Scotty,
right?
Who lost putting and lost chipping.
That's the bigger conversation, by the way. And I don't know, it might have been Rick who posted out, Rick Rungood, and I think it was, or maybe it was Underdog took it from somebody else. Or anyway, the big Scotty thing was like Scotty actually has the same results as last year. I think it was 1 extra T10 actually than last year, 6 versus 5, but the same amount of everything else this stage of the season. But he's actually gaining more on strokes gained, and he's looked horrible. It's looked like bad Scotty. If anybody sort of took a pulse on it, be like, man, Scotty's been bad. Well, same or better than last year, and he hasn't even got the results yet. And then last year he went on to win like 5 of the next 11 or something from this standpoint. I'm not saying that's going to happen. That's kind of more interesting to me than like if Cam Young gave some away, he still probably would have won or been right there.
The Scotty thing is really interesting because he was surviving on smoke and me. He was doing what Cam Young just did at this tournament for most of the season. That his driving was really good. His approach play was average to below average on tour, and he was chipping and putting everything. Like it's funny that for all those years, man, if Scotty could just putt, he would win tournaments. And now he's one of the best in the world on the greens. We know how elite his short game has been. It's always been that good. But even when you look at his career rates for chipping and putting, they're way above baseline. His driving is above baseline. His iron play is way down. And now since the Masters, I mean, the Heritage was a bit of an outlier, but 2 of the past 3 tournaments now. The Masters, he gains a ton on approach. Doral, he gains a ton on approach. That is the Scotty that I'm worried about. The Scotty that couldn't hit approach shots is not the Scotty I was worried about. And that's kind of where I'm at with Cam Young, that it can all come together because you can spike in these different areas throughout the course of the week. But consistently at the top of the board, you want the ball striker that Scotty Scheffler has shown 2 of the past 3 events than what Cameron Young has. Since peaking at the Players where he gained 7 strokes on approach, he's actually gotten worse every week on approach shots.
Yeah. I mean, everything you just described there, though, it's funny. It rounds in our content creator discussion, though. It's like when you can host, you can guest, and you can solo show, you have, it's like you can do it all. Like then it's like anything can show up at any time and you can kind of pull it off. If a basketball player who's a big and is typically known for getting it done down low, all of a sudden you get these bigs that can shoot threes and make those at ease and things like that and play defense better and all these different factors. It's like they can actually guard guys at the top of the key. All this, that becomes more dangerous. And that's what the question is, Pat. That for Scotty, we know that's what it is. For Cam Young, is he becoming that dangerous where even when you want to say, yeah, but it was a lot of short game and putting, is it that he has all the other stuff in the bag good enough to sort of be in that upper echelon beyond the obvious of he literally has been in that echelon recently and just won again last week? That's the question.
Well, the thing that I would say, like I can look at the rabbit hole right now and you can just see kind of a direct correlation of like where it's going for him and why he's been so much better this year, like year over year. Like the driver it was down each of the past 2 years, but it's back to like where it was when he first came on tour and he was an elite driver. It is the consistency of his irons that have been different because he was just about average on tour for his entire career on approach play. And now he is above that because he's had these spike weeks and he would always have spike weeks, but then he would like lose 5 strokes on approach and it made him wildly inconsistent. So I guess the reason why he's improved so much, and you can see it with the baseline on the putter too, that basically since the middle of last year, he's been good to very good on the greens on a more consistent basis. Even around the greens, you can see he's nudged himself into the positive. So clearly he's worked on his floor being better. And that is sort of the last tier of becoming an elite player overall. We saw Scotty go through this sort of stuff. We've seen Rory go through this stuff. Xander go through this stuff over time. Although Xander's a really weird case because he's always just kind of good at everything. And it's the weeks that he gets super hot at 2 of those things that he ends up winning. And then you win 2 majors. Bryson's weird. I would say that Bryson is weirdly the best comp to Cam Young right now because Bryson, you can rely on his driver being awesome all the time and he putts great more often than he putts poorly. But it's the chipping and iron play. They're like, if he can just be okay, he can win. And now with Cam Young, he has 4 parts of his game where if 2 of them are really good, the other ones aren't so bad that it's killing him like it used to. But I am dubious that can keep up for a long period of time. Unless he's just a different player now, or we're seeing him on, we see guys go on 18 months. Look at fucking Wyndham Clark. He was untouchable for 18 months.
That's what I was saying earlier. That's a great one of the question. Is Cam Young moving towards Scotty Scheffler or is he a Wyndham Clark? Like that would be a prime example. And again, it sounds ludicrous. Some people have some hate. I'm sure. I'm just noting it. Like that's what you just framed up. I will say though, it stems back. Like when you pulled up those BetSperts golf stats, is like, it's again, yes, there's the around the green factor and the putters got better and you saw that in there, but isn't it better when you're better with your driver in the fairways more often and being able to have those better approaches to give yourself those opportunities and things like that? It's just kind of fixes more to the side for me of what you said of like just a better all-around golfer, because that's what even the Scotty effect is based around that. Like when Scotty misses, he still has the opportunity to make it up and with that around the green game. And most times he's just not missing as much as he's making. So it's like kind of better when you have that, better off the tee, in the fairways more, playing for some better approach shots, fixing your ball striking. And then when those other ones are a little bit offline, you have the ability to fix them. So I think it all stems together. And I would lean more on the side of he's just getting that much better. Plus he's getting confidence and the wins and playing better through that down the stretch and being able to close these things out.
This is really interesting. If we take a look at the ball speed category on Cam Young, you can see that when he came on tour, he was right around 187 or even 186 ball speed. A prolific driver, obviously gaining a ton off the tee. But the past 2 years, he's basically dropped that by 4 to 5 miles per hour. And you've seen, especially this year, his accuracy go way up. And maybe that's exactly the key factor here when we start breaking it down. Like his driving distance is at its lowest point as it's been in his career. His accuracy is at its highest. But no one's going to call him short off. He's above average distance. But now all of a sudden, it's a lot the same as what Minwoo has done this year. He hits mini driver off the tee a little bit more than driver when he needs to. He's like, mate, I got to hit some more fairways. I can't play it to the rough the entire time. Cam Young has kind of figured that out, and maybe that is the direct correlation, hitting more fairways with having better approach play to go along with it. And I think that Cam Young's a better player than Wyndham Clark. It's just, we've seen guys like this style of player go unconscious. I would say that the big difference between Cam Young and Wyndham Clark is Cam Young doesn't seem like an absolute mental case, where his calm, cool, and collective type of persona, I think, really does translate to golf. Feinberg said he's kind of like Dustin Johnson.
Yeah, definitely agree. And we've seen those comps in the past and people bringing it up, but it kind of had to show what this was. If you remember when, what was Bubba's old caddy that worked with Cam Young for like a week or two, or what was it again?
Oh, no, it was...
or who was it?
No, because Ted Scott was Bubba's caddy. Now he's with Scotty. Who was it? Was it Tesori was on the bag?
Yeah,
after he left Webb Simpson?
Sorry. It was Webb's old caddy, right? And so I remember when he went over, somebody from like the golf world had DM'd me and said, hey, it doesn't even matter now. Like, I'm not going to dox them or anything, but it said like, hey, don't say this to anyone. But Tesori said when he left Cam Young that like his dad has crazy involvement and they just kind of do their own thing. And at the end of the day, Tesori said that Cam Young's either going to, it was almost like the Bryson quote from back in the day. Like he's either going to go on to win a bunch of majors or end up in a straitjacket. It was kind of the same conversation around Cam Young. Said he's like, he just really wants to do his own thing. He worked with his dad, who's obviously this famous golf pro over at whatever it's Sleepy Hollow or whatever that course is in New York. I forget the name of it. Sorry. But just noting, he said like, he kind of wants that. And Tesori's like, they don't want feedback from anyone. And he's like, he's either going to go on to be one of the top players or he's going to completely lose control of his game. And sure enough, look at him now, went on to fully grasp it. And now he's just rolling. So yeah, little interesting tidbits like that and things along the way are always just noise and nuggets. But I do think it's kind of interesting to see how he's played out from there to here and what we have to see going forward.
Now, one of the stark differences that you can find here, I just mentioned it with Scotty. Obviously, Dustin comes up in this conversation as well. Cam Young is now doing it, that we find these prolific drivers who improve their iron play enough. Now, Scotty was always an amazing iron. He was a better iron player than driver. He's actually improved his driving. But we just take ball striking in general. And I was praying this would happen to Luke List for years. With a decent short game, Scotty obviously elite. Luke List was elite for a while. Cam Young is getting better. But the improvement in putting that these guys can have, like some guys are never going to figure it out on the greens. This is a point that I made over and over that it was always between Brendan Todd and Dustin Johnson. I think that I used the Travelers when they went head-to-head on that final day. Obviously, Dustin ended up winning, but that really wasn't the point. Is when you show up to the golf course, you can bank on Dustin Johnson gaining a stroke per round off the tee. He's just going to do that because he is amazing. He is going to drive the ball 330 yards. But he might actually putt better than Brendan Todd that day as well. You don't know. Brendan Todd, great putter. One of the best over like the past 15 years. But he could lose to anyone on the greens in any day. He could have a bad day. Someone could have a hot day. You know what Brendan Todd was never going to do? Drive it 330 yards.
Right. And that's why when we get to all those courses where we talk about like the, what the course fit is and all this, that, and the other, and Blickel does a phenomenal job of this when we talk about as well. Like, yeah, everyone's on the Bombers this week, but here's why I think this. And you can look at the course, you can see the results, you can see the past history, you can see how this could lean in their favor. It's because a lot of that. So Denny McCarthy was showing up at a bunch of them. We know why. He's one of the best putters in the world, but it was like there was big boy events that he was showing up in. Brian Harmon was showing up in big boy events with longer courses and things like that, where it's like, yeah, it's not going to be 330 off the tee, but it's going to be in the fairway. Then it's going to be up on the green, and then they can make some putts or find it around the green with their hands or things like that, where it just keeps them in the contention. And then when they start making them and go unconscious with the putter or just even on a bit of a hot run, you're like, oh shit, like now they're in the mix for real and they're not going away. And that's just part of it. So that's why we love the game, Pat. That's what makes it so fun to sort of analyze and bring it from all different perspectives for betting, DFS, just chatting through it as buddies, like all those factors. It makes this game a lot of fun to watch and to figure out. Try to figure out, I should say. It's golf.
So I want to see if we can find one of these players. So I'm bringing up the rabbit hole again, betspertsgolf.com/Mayo. Get yourself the discount. Just click it down in the description. So that's strokes gained total. I want to go to strokes gained putting for a second. So let's see if we can find guys, so like all rounds, last 300 rounds. We don't care about like last 4. Let's look at last 50. So you can see that Cameron Young, and this is just this field that only has 72 guys in it. Cameron Young goes from 41st of all of his rounds. Over his last 300 rounds, he's 34th, which includes, the past 50 type stuff. And now he's 18th. Trying to find this type of player, I think, is very interesting if we can do it. Guys that were like Goddard is another good example, that the closer that we get to Goddard, the better putter he's becoming. And I would say that if you had to nominate anyone to have a Cam Young style leap over the next 2 years, Goddard would probably be the guy, wouldn't he?
Yeah, and he's already done some of that, right? Like, again, people aren't going to give him credit for a 38th last week or anything, but that's just 1 week. Over the last year, yeah, you've seen it. And even on that sheet you've got up in front of you, he kind of still fits that mold a little bit as well.
Yeah, so he fits that mold. He's getting better the closer we get, although he's just slightly better over the past 50 than he has been for his career. Let's see if anyone else is kind of popping up here of like way down, and now they're a lot better. We don't seem to have that many. Let's just sort
Michael Kim, I think, was the answer, wasn't it?
Michael Kim, Woodland, right? Well, I bet Woodland this week. I love Woodland at $7,600, but you can see like he's gained 8 out of 9 tournaments this year on the greens. He has been historically, whether it's all rounds, last 300 rounds, 200 rounds, one of the worst putters on tour. Over his last 50 rounds, he's 10th. Over his last 75, he's 17th. Like, he's getting good on the greens, which is.
Can you click in to see if he has any of the ball speed, off the tee stuff, anything like that in comparison to Cam, just to make it interesting?
Well, his ball speed's like one of the highest on tour now. Like, it's outrageous.
Okay, opposite effect, right? Yeah,
he's gained ball speed, although the distance is a little bit down from where it was over the last. Sorry, that's let's look year over year. He's up 5 miles per hour ball speed than last year. Like, he's done the Adam Scott and he's gained 7 yards of distance. Obviously, the accuracy is bad, but we've seen him have that fairway finder cut shot, which is really cool to watch. It's like a little low stinger that he can hit into the fairway. So he's gaining a bunch off the tee. He sucks around the greens. That's always been kind of his issue. He's gained once in his career, and that was in 2016. But you can see some of the highest off the tee numbers he's had. The approach play has been flat. It hasn't been as good as the rest of his career, but he's had these spike moments this year when you take a look at it. Even last week, like, he lost strokes on approach last week, but just take a look at his round by round. Plus 2.4, plus 3.9, -4, -6.5. You can see how he won a tournament kind of based on this. The driver showed up like it always does. The putter spiked a little bit normally than it did. And instead of having 2 good, 2 bad rounds, he has had like 4 pretty good rounds at Houston, and that's how he ends up winning. Even his last day was pretty bad. So that's why I think that he could win this week. Taylor Pendrith is another one like this. Another guy that I bet this week, a ton of distance, a pretty good putter, and the iron play is either good or bad. He's kind of where you need Cam to show up and Scotty to show up and make some putts if they really want to run away with it. Pendrith and Woodland are kind of, now they need to show up and hit their irons and to be able to spike that way, because the other two things that they can do, they're more in the Bryson camp of, hey, if you can just hit your irons well enough, you're going to be good here.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that's just interesting looking at the Gary Woodland flip side of that. As he said, he went up, his accuracy went down. It's kind of like the opposite of Cam, really, but it just shows that when he spikes and has his stuff that he needs to make up for, that's when it can be really good. The most interesting thing about Woodland, though, is he kind of fits those Xander Cam Young builds this week, but then you have to consider there's guys around him that people might like, whether it's Gerard, Smalley, if people want to play a long-term name of like Justin Thomas or recency of this year, Akshay, like the Justin Rose, Kitayama, Hogard, all those guys are in the exact same range as Gary Woodland, and almost all those guys, or at least the majority of them, would fit into, in some way, shape, or form, Cam Xander lineups that we talked about earlier being popular.
So let's try to build out these popular lineups. Cam Young, Xander Schauffele, and then I threw in my two goons here. I like Woodland, I like Pendrith, I like Noren. Those would be the guys that I would go with, and I'll see what I have left over. Back up to 83, which lands me on like Minwoo, Straka, Harris English. What do you do with Jake Knapp this week?
That's going to be crazy. So people were following him around last week and saw the wrist strap and the fact that he wasn't really hitting. And, when he did hit, it didn't seem great. And so that kind of came up. Our guy, Matt Gannon, was boots on the ground. He had it. I know some others around the industry saw it. And then the WD. So I don't think people are going to be excited to go back to him, but there always is some that say maybe he's a week better. He was out there last week. It was so close. He just couldn't quite get there and had to WD. So I know I'll be taking shots in my portfolio at just 8K, but it's not for everybody, and I understand why. I think here's the clear case, though, just to close out your lineup. Like, Minwoo is always popular. It doesn't matter because it's just at average right now, slightly below average price. That just closes out your lineup. People say, "Oh, that's chalky." This, that, and the other probably is. That's a really good lineup on paper. It just is, and then it just now you got to think about how you can beat it. People always mess this up too. It's like, is it a a really good lineup. You could not like that it's, good for what you're playing in or what you would be going after or why you'd be getting different and different factors from a DFS perspective. But it's not hard to understand why closing that with Min Woo Lee would be, what people land on or why they do. That's pretty obvious.
We'll have a better sense of the ownership projections. You can get those in the rabbit hole as well, and you and Blickle will talk about them on the Wednesday show you guys do over on the Ship It Nation YouTube channel. However, I don't think that Woodland is going to get that kind of steam because, as you mentioned, Smalley is there. And I think if people can find, like, if we were to rejig this lineup to make it chalkier, I think we take Woodland out, we put Kitayama in. Obviously, Pendrith and Noren aren't necessarily going to be the guys that are right there. Is Bud Colley do anything for you? Because dude was electric last week ball striking and lost 10 strokes putting.
Yeah, it looks like in the upper 6K range. People like Cootie, Rattan was there again last week too, and people play Rio and Yella's there, but I do think Colley's going to get some steam just coming over from last week. How much? It's the $6,800 price point. It's the upper 6K range, maybe not a ton, but I definitely think there's going to be at least some interest there to bring him across.
I thought he did make the cut at the PGA Championship last year.
He just didn't have a good run out there.
Yeah.
By the way, Alex Fitzpatrick beat a lot of big names after everybody said that he got dragged to the finish line by his brother. Looked pretty good last week out there in his first official PGA Tour member event, going out and getting the job done for a pretty solid week for himself. He's 6,800 as well.
Would you go to him?
I don't know. Like I'm just pointing out, like in that upper range, when you see, like you said, I don't mind like Pendrith and your boy Ricky Castillo and Colley and Rattan and Cootie, and I like the lower 7K range as well. There's a bunch of guys there we can go back to, but it's just a point to be made of, like, I just think a lot of people judge something so quickly. Back to our thoughts earlier on, like Cam Young and Fitz and Oberg and all these different guys that are going to get different conversations around them. People said that Fitzpatrick was dragged by Matt, and then he goes out and beats a ton of big names in the event last week. So at least somewhat interesting to play a guy while he's still playing well, right? People typically don't go back to someone after something like that happens. So it could be interesting.
So I think this is what we're dealing with here. Cam Young, Xander, Kitayama, I think is going to be a very popular start because I think that Kitayama is going to be pretty highly owned. He fits kind of perfectly at this course. Then I filled it out with Stevens, Pendrith, and Min Woo. It doesn't need to be those guys, but I think those are easy clicks to make.
Yeah, I think it's more popular, and that's the more chalky version of what you were on before, and that's a 2v2, right? Is the Kitayama Stevens fill-ins there for what we had before from Noren and whoever else it was, but just noting it.
It was 2v2 Noren Woodland.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so that's the difference there, where it's not really going to be that much different, but it is the more chalky version for sure.
So do we want to try to build out the like Cam Young Fitz, Xander Fitz, Cam Young Ludwig, Xander Ludwig, or try to go to Rory?
I think the bigger conversation is Rory, right? Because if you look at the version we just had, sure, you can move Pendrith up to whoever you like better. You can move, if it was the Woodland Noren version, you can change them slightly to the Kitayamas of the world and that, but it's not that much different. It's just who do you like between Fitz and Xander. So to me, the conversation from a roster construction and building these lineups is let's look at Rory. But the other conversation is if you're going with Fitz over Xander, then that's just got to be your thought or your feeling for the week of why you're doing it. You know what's happening. The lineup's not changing that much. We're not going to be able to give you some revolutionary, well, if you do that, you get this. No, you get $100. You just clearly like Fitz over Xander in that lineup for whatever reason. But, which I think is fine. I actually think it's a great possibility. But the Rory lineups are completely different, right? Or can be, because you're going up to 11-7 for just Rory.
I know that you won 100K at the Masters and Showdown, right?
Yes. It was 140K, but the Sunday result was 100K for second, the big boy score.
So you've been playing a ton of Showdown then?
Yes, I always do. I think Showdown is still one of the best games out there. I just don't think, one, I don't think everybody's sufficiently bankrolled for it when they consider what they're doing on the classic slate, like I mentioned earlier. Two, I think people really struggle with some of the concepts outside of round 2 and round 3, where I think anybody who's like not confident with Showdown but thinks they're, they like it, they like round 2 and round 3 because usually you're playing some sort of like morning guys or something wave where, or most people are, where you are cutting the pool down. And then in round 3, the pool's been cut in half. And then there's a morning only wave. So you can cut it in half again. So it's kind of like NFL Showdown, Pat, where they see, I kind of do good in this. Well, what you probably do good is because the pool is smaller, which means there's less mistakes to be made. That's how I would look at it.
I can bring up the spike round totals on the rabbit hole, like looking at it, like Cam Young, Ludwig, Rory, Xander, not shocking. Woodland's there, Shooter Sean's there, Bhatia, Bobby Mack, Michael Kim, Chandler Blanchet is up there, along with Alex Fitzpatrick and Hovland. Has Michael Kim been like successfully on in like at least one showdown winning team every single week over the past month? The dude just like reels off like 7 unders.
Yeah, I don't remember specifically off the top of my head besides last week, which he definitely was on that one with the 6, I think it was like a 6 under bogey free or whatever, but just noting it, that's the whole concept around when people, again, they don't dissect these things or say like, I'm going to do this, then that, but it's like in some cases, even on a cut week, like you mentioned earlier, it's like, I don't know if this guy's going to make the cut for me, so I might not want to fit him into my lineup from that perspective, and I don't know if just one Saturday spike round, if he sneaks in, is going to be enough to help me in my classic lineups. But you can sort of earmark that and say, you know what? If Michael Kim gets through and makes the cut, I want him on Saturday. Nobody's going to be on him probably, and I can get that spike round from him. So that's kind of how you can separate it in a no cut like this. So we talked about a little bit last week where those spike rounds obviously become valuable because it's, 2 out of your 4 can still be valuable on the scoring front.
Well, this is what I wanted to get to for constructing like the week-long lineups, that one of these spike rounds, just with the birdie streaks, the bogey-free round, whatever it might be, can be ultra valuable. And I did go back and I watched the PGA Championship from last year and just forgot. I texted him afterwards, like, I forgot you made that like 90-foot putt coming down. It was like one of the highlights of Sunday, just from nowhere. Like a million miles away, Michael Kidd's like walking in putts. So at least he knows the greens pretty well. But 3 of the past, if you take a look at his by round stuff, you go back to Valais, he's played 4 tournaments. Obviously the Masters, he missed the cut. But he gained over 6 strokes in round 2 at Valero. And then at Heritage, he gained 8 strokes in round 4. And then last week, he gained 6.5 strokes in round 3. It's kind of wild that just almost every single week that he's going out, he has one of these rounds that is annihilating the field.
Yeah, and that's the thing where you got to factor everything in. Obviously, that's when you can just hand pick that round. If you could, that'd be great. Much better for showdown. But if you use this price point, like this week, 6,400, I think last week was around 65 or 66, 67, somewhere in that range. T18 at that price with the 65. By the way, it wasn't bogey free, but it started with an eagle and had a streak involved as well, so it was very valuable. When you get a T18 with that type of round in there from a scoring perspective, and the position placement points that end up coming with it, and his price tag of 60, whatever it was, low, upper 6s to mid 6s, that's when that becomes valuable. So yes, if it makes stuff work, Pat, that's definitely what you want to have interest in and take your shots that way. I love that call.
I was going to say Yella Miraju's kind of the same way, where he just kind of sucks, right? Like now that he's playing in these like real events, he just kind of sucks for 3 rounds, but then he'll just spike with. It happened with him and Kitayama playing together in round 2 last week, which is like, oh my God, these guys are playing a different course.
Right. So it's, I know we already had Rory and Xander in there, but it's kind of like the reverse of this. If you had and we'll get to them, maybe both of them still, but you could do it this way. Put in Yella for a second. And it's not even
Yella.
Yeah, it's not even about just where you go from here, but it's just noting. So for example, when you do Xander Cam, and you need 4 guys for 7,500 at that point, right? Well, now you've got, not with those 2, I'm saying that's this. I was trying to show this, so you jumped ahead, but you're on the same path my thought was going. Right now, well, you do need a couple $7,500 guys. You've got it with 2 6K guys. Most will have 0, and you don't have Cam Young in this one. It could be Cam Young or Xander, but you did the flip without even going anywhere for these final 2 spots for a second. Do what you just did. Also, if you go back to the original build, you can now skip the entire 7K range, which is the average when you start with Cam Young and Xander, where most people do. They go top down, Pat, right? They go, I'm going to go Cam Young and Xander. I'm just going to pick different guys in the 7K range. That could work. But from a DFS strategy perspective, how many people are getting to this? And that's where you see the difference, right? You now could go with no 7K guys at all. In this case, you've added a 7K, but just to point it out, that's why I wanted to show that off. And that's really where, like I say, DFS is how, not who. We're on the same who of Cam Young and Xander, but it's just in a totally different way. It's how we're playing it that matters. So
you could do Cam Young, Xander, Michael Kim, Ol Yella, and then you could fit in, well, it leaves us with the decision, because if you have Rory in there, it's the exact same 2v2 that we had earlier. It could be Noren and Woodland versus Stevens and Kitayama. It's exactly the same price point. If we switch in Cam Young in the Rory spot, we can now go Kitayama and Adam Scott. That becomes the switch. The 2v2 is actually Stevens and Rory versus Cam Young and Adam Scott. And honestly, as much as I like Rory, Cam Young, Adam Scott sounds a lot better.
I'm with you. And I agree with that. That's why you want to look through these cases, especially for somebody playing less lineups. If you only have 1 to 3 lineups, these are the types of decisions you have to make and think about. Now, you can play a 3 max like a single entry. Alex talks about that all the time. And I think that's smart as well. If you really like that lineup, nothing forces you to pick one or the other. You could just, instead of playing a $50 single entry, play a $20 3 max for $10 more real money, but be able to get both versions if you can't decide. But just noting it, that's the type of lineup where if you had Min Woo and Mav McNeely, let's say those are the most 2 popular projections in the 8K range, let's just say from a median perspective. Well, you do have a bit of a chalky build in those top 4 guys. You have no 7K guys, and so you have a completely different construction and 2 separators at the bottom. So you've got 2 different levers you're pulling in roster construction and in low-owned options in the 6K range. So you've got yourself a different lineup, even with the chalky middle. But again, you can play it however you see it from there. I'm just noting that from a roster construction perspective.
For sure. And we can go back and we make that the Rory lineup. So if we try to figure out a Rory lineup, we'll chuck in Rory, we'll get rid of McNeely and Minwoo. So now we're back to that $7,600 range. I think do you think many people will play Rory with a Xander, or do you think that they'll even try to be like, you know what, I need some discount here. Let me get rid of Xander. Let me use Ludwig. And now I'm at 7,800 and I can jam in Kitayama if I want to and Nikolai Højgaard. Like, that strikes me as more of a, and maybe it's not Yella Miraju and Michael Kidd. Maybe it's guys that are a little bit higher. So we can just like ditch those guys. And you go like Sam Stevens, who I think is going to be popular. And then you had mentioned who was at the upper, whether it be Pendrith and then and Taylor Homa. Ugh, don't like that so much. How about we do Collie, Cootie? Like, that's probably more of a Rory lineup that you'll see.
Yeah, if people are going to go to that, I think what would happen is more people would land on, even if they go with Rory and Ludwig, they would land more on the Stevens and up. They would find some balance where Kitayama would come down and the others would get you to like that. You could leave one of them in there, so like leave Collie, but I'm saying now they would start making like their Norin and Gerard decision or whatever that looks like. You know what I mean? That's kind of where I see that type of thing going. What I don't see happening, at least, from that perspective of again, very similar to this build, but just noting it, is splitting the difference. And what I mean by that is how many people will start Rory Fitz, skip Cam Young and Schauffele, pick up the win equity of Rory and Fitz, who people can say what they want about Fitz, but clearly there's win equity there at this point. And then you don't have Ludwig or some of those other guys, and you still land in that lower range. But that's a way where you're kind of like double leveraging the 2 guys at the top via different construction and not using the guy that could easily fit in there, Xander or Young, for just $100 or $200 more.
I think I like this version of the lineup, especially with Rory, of then going to the 2 6K guys. Your mileage may vary on who it is. I do like Pendrith. I do like Michael Kim. That's probably where I would land. I don't know if I like where it leaves me, although I can go Woodland Kitayama, which I do like a lot, actually. I like this lineup.
Yeah, and it's an example of kind of getting some of your favorites, because Pat, for you, Kim, Pendrith, and Woodland, fine. Kitayama is just like the guy. You just land there, but it's like clearly there's a path to, if it was Akshay or Rose that you liked, you could drop Kitayama down and move Fitz back up. I was just noting that I don't think many people are going to split the difference on Young and Xander. I think if they go to Rory and can fit another upper guy in there, it's likely to be, we know from just the standalone ownership, that it probably leads to the combinatorial ownership of Rory and Xander or Rory and Cam Young, and leave Fitz out of it. This allows you to do whatever you want, even if in your case, this one here is playing your favorites. That's kind of the thought process as well. But, leave the money if you want, even if you like Akshay, that's fine too.
I can leave the money. I like Akshay. I actually think I do like, I bet Norin. So that's somewhere where I'm going to have to live with that when he comes like T90 in a field of 72 guys. However, I do like Alex Smalley a lot. I don't know if I trust it, but he is playing good golf.
Yeah, Alex Smalley, 75. If you go there, what does that leave? So you could actually now get the Rory Cam Young version, Pat, of your build. You could get Rory Cam Young. This is a strong one for what we've talked about. Then you get Woodland Smalley, who probably are in that secondary tier in that mid-range. They'll get some for sure. But when you landed on Pendrith and Kim, I don't think it's going to be too crazy. Plus, you're skipping the entire 8 and 9K range with low owned separators at the bottom, and starting with Rory, who at least has some ownership discount to Young and Xander, while pairing him with Cam Young. So this has some significant opportunity here if you want to roll with that.
This is the version of the lineup that I built last week that really worked for me. And that, again, if I've identified there's only so many guys that I like from the top and want to play together, I need to play at least two of them. I think I would play Rory Xander in this lineup because I like Xander a little bit more than I like Cam Young this week, both as a play, just in general. I mean, you do get the $100. It doesn't make a difference to us. And if you didn't like Smalley, Woodland, Pendrith, or Michael Kim, in this lineup in particular, you can turn Woodland into Kitayama instantaneously because there's $200 left over. Or if you don't like Kim or Pendrith, you can improve Kim up to Denny, Poston, Ryan Fox if you wanted to, or take Pendrith and turn him into Bud Colley, Brian Harmon, Alex Fitzpatrick, Yella Miraju, Hitsatsune, or Potgieter. And like, there's different ways that you can manipulate this. This is the one that I like the best, but I think this is the style of lineup that I want to go this week, unless I went with another high-low. But there's no one really in the eights that I'm in love with, honestly.
That's the big conversation here too, right? As much as we talked about the 9K range and kind of left a bunch of dudes out, in the 8K range, you mentioned Scott. We talked a little about Goddard. We know Min Woo is kind of the projections guy, but I don't think like Knapp, who we already talked about, Sepp, Harris, Hovland, McNeely, Griffin, Hideki at 8,800. We just don't get the love on those guys like we usually do. And I think that's at least somewhat interesting to me here, by the way, is like Hideki 8,800, Justin Rose 7,700. Like, the McLaren clubs, and it's like there's gonna be a tons of conversations. I get it. It's anything can happen in this any given week, and the caliber of these players at these prices could still get you a really unique lineup where let me do this one with you real quick. I'm going to delete that. Let's go I won't even put JT in it for you because I know that's not going to get love, but let's just do Justin Rose. Let's do Hideki. And then let's do like Fitz, Fleetwood. What does that leave us?
Fleetwood is based on this conversation, Fleetwood is shaping up to be an elite pivot.
Right.
Like, all he needs to do is be better than Ludwig, and you are in the money.
Yeah, Siwoo has also been phenomenal lately, too. We can't fit them all. We might have to drop Decky. Would you like Decky or Siwoo, depending on
we need to go back to, like, old school pricing when Mike Weir would be, like, $4,000 at the Masters. That,
Mike
like, one
Weir.
year where they did that.
Yeah. I think it's, like, I don't know. Like, this is just spitballing, but what does that leave you? Now, it drops you. I guess it would put you back in, like, that Colley, Michael Kim range. If you go Colley, Michael Kim.
Yeah, you can fit that.
And you drop Decky, you would get 3 9K guys: Fitz, Fleetwood, Siwoo, Justin Rose, Bud Colley, and Michael Kim. Nobody has this build until now.
Do you want this build though? I guess is the question. If you're playing, like you said, an entire portfolio of be it 50, 100, 150 lineups. If I'm playing 10 lineups, do I care about this style of lineup, or do I just hammer down on the ones that have the two very high end guys? Like, I like that high low, maybe balance middle, maybe up down middle. I get why this is completely different. I just wonder if is this lineup any good?
Yeah, for what you said is key though. Like, if you only have 10 lineups, my other, one that I always say is if you play lighter, play tighter. So I don't see why you would fit this in outside of like some random FOMO or whatever that might be. That's what people need to understand when you've got 150 plus, or if you're playing unique lineups and you're playing, 150 in the $5 and a completely different 150 in the $20, $25, whatever, then yeah, you definitely get to stuff like this most likely. And you could see how this could still get there. It's like, like you said, if Fleetwood just beats Oberg, if Kim shows up again and this week goes all the way. I don't know if you heard this last week. Did you hear like it was a mashed up mess up of Scheffler and Siwoo Kim giving a fist bump to a high five, as you usually see in the golf world, awkwardness, but they were talking about them practicing a ton together and how much better Siwoo has got. And, you are some of who you surround yourself with. And so I think that kind of shapes up as well. But Siwoo's having a phenomenal season. So you could definitely see Fitzpatrick, Siwoo, and Fleetwood all show up at the top of the board. I mean, it's very possible. Scott, Rory has a down week. Cam Young doesn't have the putter in the around the green game. We just showed how that would affect him earlier. And Xander does his T10 on Sunday type thing and doesn't really matter. So that's where this could show up. But if you only have 10 lineups, I think you should get laser focused around what you want those 10 lineups to look like. And to your point earlier, Pat, these guys besides Fitz weren't in your top 5 up top. So I think you'd want to be building around your top 5 up top, the majority of your pool that you like down below, boosting the guys you like the most, and then getting your best 10 from that range. That's the example.
I like this idea. I think that these 6 guys in a lineup is so much better next week at the PGA Championship at that course than at Quail Hollow. Just throwing that out there. I like all of these guys next week.
Yeah, it's very possible.
Maybe not so much Michael Kim, because I think that Michael Kim can miss fairways here and be fine. I don't think you're going to be able to miss a ton of fairways at Aronimink if you're not a bomber and get away with it.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I guess like this is a bigger example of it this week. Then you and I have talked about this a ton in the past, but for those who haven't heard us talk about it, like this is more of a betting on talent and name.
Yes.
But like here's an example, Pat. Completely different lineup, and it still fits, and it's almost similar to what we were just on. But if you just went, I'm just doing my version of it. I know people hate on certains, but the double Justins, you go Justin Thomas at one of his lowest prices in the longest time. You get Justin Rose and Akshay. Like, it shouldn't shock people if these guys show up at a tournament. And then you get the 2 8K guys that are the long-term talents, in my opinion, of Hideki and Hovland. Where does it land you? The elite pivot of Tommy Fleetwood. If that was the top of your leaderboard this weekend, my dad would be going nuts. That's a great board. He knows everybody in the mix. Like, that's wonderful. Who's this Alex Smalley loser? Even though we just said we know he's not a loser, he's playing incredible golf. My point is, if he's seeing these guys up there, he's thrilled. This is a 9, 2 8s, and 3 7s build. It does land in the 7K realm of what your Xander Cam Young lineup lands on, needing 4 of those guys. But this gets you to 2 8K guys that could most certainly be in the mix, Decky and Hovland, whether you believe it or not. And then lands on Fleetwood, who won the FedEx Cup last year and is still Tommy Fleetwood. Doesn't matter like what he did last week or the week before. It's this week that we need to worry about. So just my point of long-term talent, fitting a unique build, obviously coming in lower owned and leaving a ton of guys that are going to be popular off the table. Again, maybe not for you to fit in your 10 lineups, but when people wonder how this stuff and how people get to this stuff and how it wins and how they get to this stuff, this is a prime example.
So obviously for mass multi-entry GPPs, large-scale tournaments, would you consider something like this in a single entry or a 3 max, or even I'm going to try to qualify for some of the megas this week and try to get in that? Would this be a lineup for that, or is it just this is better for taking on 100,000 people rather than 70?
I think it's a misconception amongst the industry, because the facts are like, obviously this would be better to take on, to most people anyway, or like the numbers and the math and the sims and all that stuff. Like, this is going to be much better to take on a large field tournament and then hope that that's your play and that's what gets you there. But I think people forget these mega $13 mega with 400 something people, it's winner take all.
Yeah.
So what do I know? Probably 1 to 5, probably less than 5 people will have a lineup anywhere near this, maybe less than 3. So if this does take off, I just win it. It's not going to be a question. And I know there's a bunch of ifs and buts and candies and nuts and all these different things, but my point being that I'm not afraid to play this in something like that, because so many others won't. And at the end of the day, it's a winner take all. We need a ceiling. That has a 12 or 13 max entry, I believe. I think it's 13. So for me to play my normal 10, even for you to go back to your point, well, I'm only going to play my normal 10. Do I need something like this? No, you don't. But if you're going to play your normal 10, and it's 13 max, why not make the other 3 where one of them is something like this? If this separates, it means your other ones are dead. And if it doesn't, it means your other 10 could be in decent shape. But what we do know is the majority of the field is going to have more lineups like your 10, Pat. So that's where this gets you out of the room. The penthouse example I gave last week of like really separating yourself, this is what does that for you. And it's not that crazy. Everybody knows everybody on this. It's just Joe Schmo on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, that says, Justin Thomas, or the YouTube comment guy, this guy's a loser and doesn't know ball or doesn't know golf. Okay. It works out for me quite well, so I'm not too worried about it. It's just the facts. It's playing the game over time and recognizing that that's how you get there with something like this, and that's what the value of it can be.
You can get more strategy insights from Tambo over at the Ship It Nation YouTube channel, and hit him up at @ToeTaggingTambo on X. Hit that article tab where you can see his strategy stuff. Then scroll his timeline where you can see me yelling at Tambo 7 years ago, almost to the day, on this program, the first time he was ever on it. And look at us now. You own your own site. You're better on camera than me. You really made it.
Yeah, right. I can't say enough good things about Pat. He's my guy. Not just a good friend, strong mentor, helped me a ton along the way. So I'm not bigging him up for any reason other than the fact that he definitely did pave the way for people like me and others. And that's why we had this. So you think you can tout conversation off the top. It's kind of just what we love on the side of things. That's sort of the bread and butter of everything else that we do and what we want to pay attention to and like. So I'm really invested in it, Pat. I'm going to keep following along. I think it's a great thing, and I'm excited to see how it all shapes out as the season goes on.
Well, I'm going to pitch this to Pete, but the move might be that there needs to be like you need to be a guest on a show, and they bring in like 3 hosts or something like that. But one is like fantasy, so maybe do 4. Do like, because obviously it's a big best ball channel with Pete, that you could do like Pete hosts a best ball segment, and then a new host comes in. You host a DFS like DraftKings segment, salary cap. Someone does season long fantasy, then someone does sports betting.
Yeah, I think it's going to be to keep them on their toes. I think that's definitely part of it. It really depends too, like what Pete is looking for. And he's been open on the show of saying like he's not even fully sure himself if he finds a combo that's good. And I love that openness about him because I think that's important. There could be something that really works out. I think in the end, it's going to work out where we're going to have a winner, but then Pete's going to have a nice little pool that he can pull from as well. But I think, again, it's not like a poach situation, but I definitely think, people like myself and others around the space in the media side of things are definitely keeping an eye on some of those contenders that might not make it all the way, but still have something we see in them or something that we like from them that we could use in the future, or to the advantage of both helping them and gaining some traction from our side as well. Because I think there's a lot of good like guys that were maybe didn't show up as well. Like I think there was a couple that you called out in the audition that were like, have to see a little bit more. I'm not sure, but I like something about this person. That's the ones that I think I mentioned even in my comment that we'll see different competitions. It'll either pull that out of them or bury them completely based off of that.
Yeah, and listen, I was doing some scouting too. I was like, hey, this guy can make a good guess for me. Like his style probably doesn't fit what Pete wants, but as I would say a cust type character, but just someone in the oeuvre of Mayo Media Network, like that guy kind of fits in.
The best was the 2 guys on the love seat. And you're like, man, that's a small couch. And I think it was just like 2 big dudes. And someone's like, wow, Mayo just found out what a love seat is in the comments. But the part that I liked about that is you're like, oh, those could be guests. Or I think some people would watch them. Hell, I think I would watch them. That was like your go-to of the first, one of the first that you were like, I would be interested in that. And it came out clearly across your statement.
At Totek and Tambo, Shipping Nation. You can sub here at Mayo Media Network. Tambo and I and Blickle, the Super Team, are going to be back this weekend for DraftKings picks for the PGA Championship. So when you're mowing your lawn because the weather's getting nice and you need to throw something in your ears, you can listen to that and get yourself prepped for $1 million slate. What are there, $3 million slates or 2 this time? 2?
2 this time around, but we'll be chasing it again, Pat. We got close at the Masters. I got close during the NFL season when you and Squirrel were making fun of me for the mustache man. And so it's got to be just around the corner. I'm excited for the PGA Championship and love getting the trio of us together, get all the stuff from Blickle on the golf course and course fit and extra strategy stuff as well. And then me and you going back and forth and getting to the other side. Hopefully I can not need to rank these guys, but we will be able to get to a pretty good section there of going through the PGA Championship. I'm definitely excited for the next major.
Maybe I'll hit Blickle with that.
Please do. Anyone but me. I'm still not pro at it. I just know how to move past it. When someone's, you've tried it on me a couple times, and I've just got better at reframing. That's the secret. Don't try to get better at the job.
Pivot.
Just pivot. You got it. Yeah, the friend saying pivot.
Yeah, it's a lot like judo, where you use my weight against me and just flip me over.
That's what I've got better at, Pat. Thank you for that. Appreciate you.
That'll do it for me. At the PME, you can get my cheat sheet where you would have got the Jake Knapp information on Wednesday afternoon last week. So you got to take him out of your lineups if you wanted to. So that is full of tidbits. It's all in. Obviously, I write the big column that comes out on Sunday evening, but all the final bets, the DraftKings ownership, any latest news, that all comes out on Wednesday afternoon. Completely free to join. Hit the Mayo Media Substack. Direct link down in the description right now. All right? I'm Pat Mayo. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Mayo Experience! Experience!